What if the company you built killed an innocent woman and you woke up in her husband's garage? Before we dive into this story, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next twists, the next heartbreaks, and the next redemption arcs we're about to tell. Lila Hart's day began before the sun. The city was still dark when she stepped onto the balcony of her penthouse. A glass box hung high above the streets. Down below, headlights flowed like white veins through the sleeping avenues. Up here, the air was thin, quiet, almost sterile. Her smartwatch buzzed. Heart rate, sleep score, meetings, countdown to IPO. Everything reduced to numbers and neat little graphs, everything under control. She liked it that way. Lila ran, alone, on the private treadmill facing the city. Each footfall was a metronome, each breath measured, contained. She watched herself in the reflection on the glass, sharp jaw, sleek ponytail, flawless performance of a woman who had never allowed herself to fall apart. In the glass, sometimes she saw something else. A girl huddled in the back seat of a rusted sedan. Foggy windows. A mother slumped over the steering wheel. Not dead, just exhausted. Engine off to save gas. Streetlights flickering over the cracked dashboard. The girl trying not to cry because if she cried, her mom would wake. And if her mom woke, she'd go back to work. Lila blinked. The image vanished. The penthouse reasserted itself. She upped the speed. By 8 a.m., she was in the elevator of Heartline's headquarters, a monolith of steel and glass that reflected the sky like a clean conscience. Her name was on the top floors, printed in brushed metal, Lila Hart, CEO. People stepped aside when she walked through the lobby. They smiled, greeted her, straightened their postures. Everyone knew the IPO was weeks away. Everyone knew tonight's charity gala would be another step in turning Heartline into an untouchable giant. In the conference room, screens glowed with charts and projections. The board wanted more. The investors wanted more. The world wanted more. Lila gave them more. We've locked the numbers for the roadshow, Richard Cole said, flipping to the next slide. He was older, silver hair, sharp eyes that had seen too many market cycles to still believe in miracles. The only thing we can't afford now is surprise. The word lingered in the room. Lila's phone buzzed on the table. A new email. From legal, urgent. She didn't open it. Not yet. Surprise is a product feature, she said, lips curving in a calm, polished smile. Not a business strategy. The room chuckled. Tension dissolved. They moved on. It wasn't until the meeting ended and the others drifted away that she checked the notification. Subject: potential liability. Autonomous driving incident. One confirmed fatality. Vehicle under Heartline autopilot. Possible system fault. Preliminary investigation suggests. She scrolled. Pictures attached. Timestamps. GPS coordinates. Words like exposure and class action and recall. Her chest tightened, just slightly. She tapped the screen, held it there. Schedule a full briefing for Monday, she said to the tiny icon of her assistant on the watch. Bring legal, engineering, PR, and don't forward this to the board yet. Yes, Miss Hart. She ended the call, straightened the cuffs of her blazer, and stepped into the next meeting. There would be time. There had to be. Tonight, she had a speech to give. The gala was a world apart from the garage she used to sleep in. Crystal chandeliers poured warm light onto polished marble floors. Cameras flashed. Waiters slipped through the crowd with champagne like liquid gold. A banner stretched across the far wall, safer roads, brighter futures with the Heartline logo shining in white. Lila stood backstage, the murmur of the crowd a soft roar behind the curtain. A makeup artist dabbed at her cheekbone, smoothing what was already flawless. Someone adjusted her mic. Someone else checked her hair. Her speech glowed on the tablet in her hand. Every line crafted, tested, perfected. Technology should not just move us faster. It should move us safer. Her phone buzzed again. Another email. Same subject line. Potential liability. Update. She hesitated, thumb floating above the screen. She watched it vibrate with urgency. Somewhere out there, a family had just been rearranged by a car that was supposed to think. She swallowed. Ms. Hart, the stage manager's voice cut through her thoughts like a cue. We're ready for you in 60 seconds. Lila locked the phone, sliding it onto the sleek table beside her. Send it to my folder, she told herself silently. Monday. When she stepped into the light, the room rose in applause. The cameras loved her. The audience leaned closer. Her words flowed from her mouth in a smooth, practiced cadence, shaped by countless interviews and investor calls. She talked about innovation, about safety, about how Heartline technology had reduced incidents by 38% in trial regions. She talked about her own childhood, the nights spent in the back of a car, how she'd promised herself that one day no one would have to fear the road the way her mother had. None of them knew that an email sat unread, waiting. By the end of the speech, they were on their feet again. Another standing ovation, another promise made. The hotel's underground parking lot was a hive of echoing footsteps and engine noises. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting long, cold shadows along the rows of glossy vehicles. Lila's heels clicked on the concrete as she walked to her car. Each step felt heavier than the last. Her phone buzzed again. Messages from Richard, from PR, from journalists praising her speech. She leaned against the side of her car, a gleaming electric SUV with Heartline autopilot. Of course, just for a second, just to breathe. The second stretched. Her hand trembled. The floor seemed farther away than it should be. The overhead lights turned into bright, spinning halos. Her chest clenched tight, as if some invisible hand had wrapped around her lungs and squeezed. Not here, she thought. Not now. Her fingers fumbled for the car door. Mist. Air grew thick, heavy, sticky. Her vision tunneled, rimmed in black. The memory of her mother's slumped silhouette behind a steering wheel flashed through her mind. The last thing she felt was the hard, cold kiss of concrete against her knees. Then the world went dark. When Lila opened her eyes, the light was different. It was warm, yellow, almost sleepy. The ceiling above her wasn't polished steel or tasteful plaster. It was corrugated metal, painted a tired white, striped with shadows from fluorescent tubes that flickered softly. The air smelled of oil and rubber and something frying. She turned her head, slow, heavy. A workbench crowded with tools. An old radio murmuring classic rock. A faded calendar with a picture of a red pickup truck on a desert road. She wasn't in a hospital. She wasn't in her penthouse. She was lying on a folded blanket spread across the bench seat of an ancient leather couch, patched with duct tape and care. Hey, a voice said. Male. Low, roughened by years of speaking over engines. Easy. You almost face-planted into a bumper last night. Lila blinked. A man stood a few feet away, hands stained with grease, dark hair pulled back at the nape of his neck. He wore a faded t-shirt and jeans, an open work jacket with his name stitched over the pocket. Noah. He held a mug of coffee in one hand, a curious concern in his eyes. This is... Her voice came out hoarse, her tongue dry. Reyes Auto, he said. My garage. You don't remember. Lila's mind flashed back. Quick fragments, the parking lot, the spinning lights, the feeling of falling. How did I get here? Security said you went down in the lot. Noah shrugged, as if dragging collapsed CEOs into his truck was just another part of the job. Ambulance was on the way, but you came around, kept saying you didn't need a hospital, then you passed out again. So, he gestured to the couch. So I brought you somewhere you could sleep without paparazzi climbing in the windows. The idea of anyone seeing her sprawled on a hospital bed made her stomach twist. Doctor will be here in a bit, Noah added. Neighbor of mine, don't worry, she's discreet. In the doorway behind him, a small face peeked in. A girl with a messy ponytail, paint-splattered sneakers, and wide, fascinated eyes. Is she awake? The girl whispered. Mia, Noah said, half warning, half soft. Give her a minute. Lila pushed herself up, heart skipping when the room swayed. Noah took half a step forward, not touching her, but ready if she fell again. The garage door was partly open, letting a wedge of morning light spill across the oil-stained floor. Outside, she could hear traffic, distant but present. Somewhere, boom, a dog barked. Not her world. Not yet. Water, Noah asked. Oh, yes, she managed. When he turned away to fetch it, Mia crept in, unable to help herself. She held something clutched to her chest, a phone, its screen dim. "You're famous," Mia said, matter of fact. Lila's heart gave a tiny, unforgiving jerk. Mia tapped the screen awake and thrust it out. The video was grainy, captured by a security camera in the hotel's parking lot. A woman in a shimmering gown stepped into frame, shoulders straight, head high. Then she staggered. Then she dropped to her knees beside a car and crumpled sideways like a puppet whose strings were cut. Someone had added text over the footage. Had boss down. When the autopilot queen crashes IRL, the views counter ticked up and up and up. Lila looked at herself, small and broken on the concrete, replayed on a loop for millions. Her throat closed. The one thing she had never allowed anyone to see the crack. The collapse was now a joke trending on a screen, held casually in a child's hand. That was the first twist, not the collapse itself. The exposure. The doctor confirmed what Lila already knew but refused to name. Exhaustion. Panic attack. "Your body is waving a red flag in your face," the woman said, stethoscope cool on Lila's skin. "You can keep ignoring it, but next time, it might not be just a faint." "I have an IPO," Lila said, as if that word should mean anything here. "In this room with peeling paint and toolboxes." "You have a nervous system," the doctor replied, "and it's done taking orders." She recommended time off. Real time off. No screens, no crises, no stages. The board, after some muttering and resistance, agreed to let Lila disappear for a few days. PR called it a wellness retreat, a mental reset for their visionary leader. The world was told she had gone to the desert, or the mountains, or some spa with infinity pools and expensive silence. In reality, she returned to the garage. Noah Reyes hadn't offered. Not exactly. But he'd said, when she hesitated in the doorway that first day, phone buzzing like a trapped insect in her hand, "You can sit here as long as you need. The couch isn't pretty, but it doesn't judge." Mia liked having her there. The days settled into an odd, fragile rhythm. In the morning, Noah rolled up the garage door, letting in the bite of city air. Cars came and went. He changed oil, checked brakes, listened to engines like he was listening to people tell the truth. Lila sat at the old wooden table in the corner, laptop open, pretending to be at a wellness resort on video calls. She angled the camera carefully so no one saw the hanging wrenches behind her. On breaks, Mia dragged her outside to see the go-kart she was building out of scrap. The frame was crooked. The wheels were misaligned. The seat was an upturned crate. "It'll run," Mia said with fierce conviction. Lila smiled, a small, tired curve of her mouth. "Engines don't listen to passion. You know, they listen to physics." "Then I'll learn physics," Mia shot back. The first time they shared a real moment with Pia was not during an argument. It was during the rain. That night, the storm rolled in fast, drumming on the corrugated roof like impatient fingers. The garage door rattled as wind pressed against it. The last customer had left hours ago. Noah had flipped the sign to closed. The world outside was a blur of water and streetlight. Inside, they lingered. Noah was finishing up under a sedan, legs sticking out from beneath the chassis. Oil dripped quietly into a pan. The radio hummed a slow song from another decade. Mia had fallen asleep on the couch, one arm flung over her face, a book sliding from her hand. Lila sat on the floor, back against a stack of tires, staring at her muted laptop screen. Emails waited, legal briefings, meeting requests, all gray boxes, all lined up, all urgent. The email about the accident had spawned more emails. Words like fatality confirmed and possible defect had turned into bullet points and risk assessments. She closed the laptop. Rain thudded overhead. Noah slid out from under the car, wiped his hands on a rag, and glanced at her. "You look like you're trying not to think," he said. "Is that obvious?" To someone who spends his life listening to noises under the surface, yeah. He nodded at the empty space beside him, under the lifted car. "Come on. Best place in the world to be in a storm." Lila hesitated. Then, almost against her own instincts, she crawled under the car and sat with her back to the cool metal. It was darker there. Safer. Noah passed her one side of a cheap pair of wired earbuds. He put the other in his own ear, tapped his phone. Music flowed in a slow, aching guitar, a voice worn at the edges. They didn't talk for a long time. Rain, music, the soft tick of cooling metal, Mia's gentle breathing across the room. For the first time in years, Lila felt her heartbeat slow without being ordered to. The tight band around her chest loosened, just a fraction. She thought of her mother then, uninvited. Of nights when they'd parked under bridges during storms, engine off, listening to rain drum on the thin roof of the car. Her mother humming along to some old song on the radio, pretending this was an adventure, not survival. Lila had learned to hate rain. Later, it sounded too much like being stuck. Here, under the car, with the storm muted to a steady rhythm, it sounded like breathing. Noah didn't ask her what she was running from. She didn't ask him who he'd lost. The silence said enough. Back at Heartline, the accident became a file. The legal team opened an internal investigation. Engineers checked logs. PR drafted contingency statements. Lila joined a video briefing from the corner of the garage, the laptop balanced on a crate. The camera framed only her face in a sliver of the wall behind her. Preliminary analysis suggests a sensor misread. The general counsel said, voice flat, the system didn't detect an object crossing the lane until it was too late. A person, Lila said, not an object. The lawyer paused. Yes, a person. We can offer a settlement. Richard's voice cut in, quietly, before this turns into something bigger. Classes are already forming online, PR added. If they connect this to our IPO, the valuation. Lila's gaze flicked to a list of names on the shared document. Reyes flashed past, then up again, then vanished as she scrolled. Her stomach clenched. Wait, she said. Can you scroll back a second? But the lawyer was already moving on to another point. The meeting ended with action items and calendar invites. When the screen went dark, Lila sat there, staring at her own reflection in the laptop's dead glass. Reyes, it had to be a coincidence. Later that day, as she wandered through the garage with a mug of coffee gone cold, she noticed a photo on the wall she hadn't seen before. A younger Noah, hair shorter, face brighter, an arm slung around a woman with laughing eyes. Mia, smaller, squashed between them, holding up a set of car keys like a trophy. Behind them, a brand new sedan. On the trunk, a small, proudly placed sticker, Heartline Autopilot enabled. The picture frame tilted slightly, hanging on a nail someone had hammered in too quickly. Her pulse kicked. Is that your car? She asked, voice too careful. Our car, Noah said from behind her. She hadn't heard him come closer. His gaze rested on the photo with a softness that didn't quite reach his jaw. It was the last stupid thing we splurged on, he said. Everyone said these things were the future, safer than humans, smarter. Thought we'd finally caught up with the times. Lila's throat closed. What happened to it? Noah's hand tightened on the rag he was holding. It didn't stop, he said. When it should have. He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. Later, alone with her laptop, Lila demanded the full internal report. The file opened with a line that felt like a knife. Victim Isabel Reyes, age 36, survived by spouse, Noah Reyes, in one child. Beneath it, a chain of emails. From engineering, from legal, from her. Weeks before the accident, someone on her team had flagged a potential sensor issue. A software patch recommended, a recall suggested. The patch would require delaying a major demo. The recall would be expensive. The IPO timeline would slip. Her answer, preserved in text, let's ship the patch in the next cycle. We cannot afford delays right now. Risk looks minimal. monitor and revisit after roadshow. She read the line again and again until the words blurred. Minimal. Risk. Revisit. One car. One road. One woman who never made it home. Lila closed the laptop so hard the screen rattled. That was the second twist. Not just that Heartline had killed someone, that she had. The slow, healing days in the garage turned sour around the edges. Every laugh from Mia now cut both ways warm and cruel. Every kind gesture from Noah felt undeserved. Lila found herself pulling back, then overcompensating, then retreating again. She lay awake at night on the old couch, staring at the ceiling, imagining his face when he realized the woman he dragged off a parking lot floor and carried into his space wasn't just a stranger with a famous name. She was the email. She was the delay. She was the choice. While she agonized, the outside world did what it always did. It talked. The video of her collapse grew teeth. The internet turned grainy footage into content. Memes, remixes, reaction clips. Then, as more fragments leaked photos of her in the garage, blurred shots captured from across the street, the narrative shifted. Ice Queen CEO hiding out with mechanic widower, real-life movie. Comments speculated wildly. Some joked. Some romanticized. Some demanded answers about the accident, connecting hints that had never been meant to connect. Heartline's PR department watched the trend lines and smelled opportunity. A few days later, an internal deck landed in Lila's inbox. Proposal humanizing arc. Lila Hart. Slide after slide of smiling. Staged images that didn't exist yet. Mock-ups of Lila in jeans and a flannel shirt, laughing beside a grease-streaked Noah in his garage. Taglines about healing, second chances, the human side of innovation. Another slide. Partner storyline. Noah R. Widowed father. Finding hope again. Confidential settlement. Grant through victim support fund. She scrolled, fingers going numb. They wanted to buy Noah's pain. Package it. Stream it. Her phone buzzed. A message from Richard. If we control the story, we control the damage. Lean into this. AS. Let people fall in love with you again. Lila stood in the middle of the garage, world spinning around her. The hum of the refrigerator in the corner suddenly unbearable. Mia sat cross-legged on the floor, carefully painting a small blue gear onto the side of her go-kart. She looked up, face smeared with color. Do you think I could put a Heartline sticker on it if it works? She asked. Like the car we used to have. Lila's stomach dropped. No, she said, sharper than she meant to. Mia froze, lower lip twitching. Lila forced herself to soften. Maybe we don't need stickers to prove something is real. Mia nodded slowly and went back to her painting. Lila took the laptop outside. The air was cooler there, the sky dimming to orange and pink. She paced between parked cars, deck still open on the screen. Her thumb hovered over Richard's name. She wanted to scream at him, at all of them. Instead, she closed the deck and let the rage sit, throbbing quietly in her chest. That was the third twist. Not the accident, not the guilt. The way the machine she'd built was prepared to feed on the very grief it had created. News leaked. It always did. A gossip site published a blurred screenshot from the internal deck, along with quotes from an anonymous source about a raw, real redemption story being developed around Lila and the widower mechanic. The headline was sickeningly catchy. From crash to love, inside the CEO's secret hideout romance. Noah saw it on his phone during a slow afternoon while Mia was in the back, humming to herself over the go-kart. He read the article twice. Then he read it a third time, slower. There were no pictures of his face, but enough details to identify him to anyone who knew. The street, the signage, the description of a little girl with paint on her hands. He walked to the sink, turned on the water, and let it run over his wrists until the chill bit the bones. When Lila came back from a call, he was waiting. You knew about this, he asked. His voice wasn't raised. That made it worse. She stopped a few feet away, laptop still in her hand. The article was open in another tab. The deck, too. I saw the deck, she said carefully. I didn't approve it. But you didn't tell me, either. Mia peeked around the corner, sensed the tension, and vanished again. It wasn't official yet, Lila said. I was trying to figure out how to spin it. Noah's mouth twisted. How to use us without making it look like you were using us. That's not what I... Do you think we're props? The calm started to crack, anger leaking through. A set piece for your comeback arc. Little guy in a garage learns to love the woman whose company. He cut himself off, jaw clenching, eyes flashing with something like fear, something like rage. Lila felt the words before he spoke them. Get out, he said. Mia's head appeared again, eyes wide, lips parted. Noah, you heard me. He wiped his hands on a rag that shook. I brought you here so you wouldn't wake up to a camera in your face. I didn't bring you here so you could turn this place into your next campaign. The worst part was that she couldn't tell him why the idea made her sick, because to explain that, she would have to tell him everything else. She looked at Mia, at the blue smear of paint on the girl's cheek. I never wanted, she tried. Doesn't matter what you wanted, Noah said. Matters what you did. Take your laptop. Take your secrets. Don't come back. She left. The garage door closed behind her with a hollow metallic bang. Back in her penthouse, the silence felt harsher. Her phone filled with messages from Richard. We need to sync on the leak. We can still pivot. This is fixable if you stick with the plan. Then, board wants to meet. They're nervous. The board call was as cold as the glass tower that housed them. They offered her a script. Accept the narrative, sorry. Play the part. Cry at the right moment. Talk about burnout, pressure, mental health. Be the hero who acknowledged mistakes were made without ever specifying by whom. In exchange, she kept her title, her stock, her control. If she refused, they would push her out, not gently. And the accident, she asked, what about Isabel Reyes? There's no upside in dragging that name into the spotlight, Richard said, for anyone. And for the truth, his gaze hardened. This is not about truth, Lila. This is about survival. She almost laughed. She almost gave in. That night, she opened the accident file again. She read every line, every log, every warning, every reply. She stared at her own words until they stopped being language and became just shapes. We cannot afford delays right now. She saw her mother sleeping in the driver's seat. She saw Isabel Reyes behind a different wheel, trusting silicon and code and marketing promises. She saw Mia's hands, painting a blue gear on a crooked go-kart. Lila opened a new document. She began to write, not a speech, a confession. She wrote about the nights in the car, about the hunger for control that had grown like a second spine in her, rigid and unbending, about the opportunity Heartline had given her, the power she had taken, and the compromises she had made. She wrote about the email, the patch, the choice. She wrote Isabel Reyes' name. She wrote about Noah and Mia, not in marketing language, but in the plain, bare words of someone who knew she had done something irreparable and was only now, too late, choosing to look. The letter wasn't neat. It wasn't polished, but it was the only honest thing she had put into words in years. She didn't send it. She saved it in a folder. Left the laptop open on the kitchen counter when she walked away to stare out at the city. Mia found it. Lila didn't know when she'd given Mia the business card. It was probably one of those afternoons when the girl had wandered through her bag, fascinated by the sleek objects of a different world, and Lila had handed over a card with a half smile. Big-time journalist, she'd said. He wrote about Heartline once, made us look better than we deserved. The card lay tucked into the back of Mia's favorite book now, a corner folded. When Mia visited the penthouse one last awkward, hopeful attempt at a bridge before Noah closed the door completely, she drifted through the rooms like a tourist. She found the laptop by accident, screen still bright, the confession left open, half finished. At first, the words were just grown-up noise, legal, corporate. Then she saw her mother's name. She read as much as she could, lips moving silently. The phrases landed in her chest like stones. I delayed the patch. I chose the IPO over the recall. Isabel Reyes died because of a risk I called minimal. Mia's fingers tightened on the edge of the table. She thought of her mom's laugh, her mom's voice singing along with the radio, the empty chair at the dinner table, the visit to the cemetery, the way Noah's face went tight when anyone mentioned Heartline. She thought of Lila, asleep on the garage couch, hair messy, corners of her mouth slack with exhaustion, of the way Lila's hands sometimes shook when she thought no one was watching. She thought of the go-kart. "Why didn't you just tell us?" she whispered to the empty room. The cursor blinked on the screen, waiting for more words. Beside the laptop, the business card glowed white. Mia picked it up. Her heart pounded hard enough to make her whole body shake, but her hands knew what to do. She'd watched her dad type emails. She knew where the send button was. She opened a new message. Attached the confession document, the internal report she found in another open tab, the PR deck, still cached in the downloads folder. In the subject line, she wrote slowly, "The truth about Heartline." No one saw her hit send. That was the fifth twist. Not a whistleblower in a suit. A child, trying to make sure no one else lost a mother to silence. The article hit like a meteor. By morning, the story was everywhere. The headline was simple, brutal. Inside Heartline emails, delays, and a death they tried to bury. Screens filled with screenshots of internal messages, timelines, charts of stock prices against dates of warnings, quotes from anonymous employees who had once tried to raise concerns. At the center of it all, pulled now from the shadows, was her email. "We cannot afford delays right now. Risk looks minimal." Talk shows dissected it. Investors panicked. Comment threads howled. Reporters camped outside Heartline's headquarters, outside her building, outside Noah's garage. The board called an emergency meeting. They wanted blood. "We can frame this as your lapse," Richard said, eyes tight, voice clipped. He looked older than he had a week ago. "You take full responsibility. Say you hid this from us. We express our shock. We move forward." "That's not true," Lila said. "It's survivable," he replied. "Whose survival?" she asked. "Yours, the stocks, or the people who trusted us not to kill them on the way home?" The room went quiet. "We are all complicit," General Counsel said softly, breaking through the silence. "Some of us more than others. But pretending this is just Lila's sin would be another lie." Eyes turned to the lawyer, then away again. "We go live in 1 hour," Richard said. "Press is already gathering. Decide what story you're telling." For the first time since she'd stepped onto a stage as CEO, Lila Hart had no prepared speech. She had a choice. She chose badly all the time, she thought. Chose profit over caution, speed over safety, control over vulnerability. Maybe this would be the first right one. "Open the auditorium," she said. "Let them all in. Press, employees, whoever wants to watch. And don't cut the feed." Richard shook his head. "That is not how we do. It is now." She stood on the same stage where she had once promised safer roads. No teleprompter this time. No polished slides. Just a microphone and 1,000 eyes. Another million behind cameras. She could feel her heartbeat in her throat. Her palms were damp. Her mouth was dry. "This won't be perfect," she said, voice picking up in the speakers, echoing back at her. "I'm not here to perform an apology. I'm here to tell you what I did." She said Isabel Reyes's name out loud. She described the warning about the sensor fault, the proposed patch, the recall, the way she had weighed costs and benefits and decided some risk was acceptable. "I called a life minimum," she said, "because I was focused on a number, a date, a valuation. I told myself that if our technology reduced overall accidents, it was worth the trade-off." She looked at the cameras. At the time, some of my colleagues pushed back. They deserved to be heard. They were not. She did not name them, but the general counsel's eyes shone just for a breath. "I didn't just fail as a CEO," she said. "I failed as a human being who had once slept in a car and sworn she would never let anyone suffer on the road the way she had. I became exactly what I thought I was fighting." She announced her resignation. She announced that she would transfer the majority of her personal stake in Heartline into an independent trust, the Little Gear Fund, with a dual mission to compensate victims of Heartline's failures and to fund education in mechanical and software safety for kids from backgrounds like hers, like Mia's. The board won't control this fund, she said. I won't control it either. A third party will, but I will work for it, for free, for as long as I'm useful. She stepped back from the microphone, heart pounding. Somewhere in the front row, a camera light blinked red. Somewhere near the back, an employee who had once written a politely worded warning email began to cry. Upstairs, in a glass room, the board scrambled. They had planned to eject her cleanly after the press conference, keep her shares, call her a bad apple in an otherwise flawless barrel. Now, with the whole world watching, ripping the trust back would look like what it was: greed. Lawyers did the fast math. Richard stared at the screen, jaw tight, as if realizing too late that the girl he had molded to survive the market might finally be choosing something else. That was the sixth twist, not a cunning power play. The surrender of power in public, irrevocably. Lila walked off the stage into the lights and noise and flashing cameras, feeling oddly lighter. Terrified, but lighter. Months later, the city felt different. Or maybe she did. Heartline went on without her. Stock dipped. Lawsuits came. Settlements were paid. Engineers wrote better code under closer eyes. The Little Gear Fund opened a modest office in an old building a few blocks from Rhea's Auto. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't need to be. On a warm evening, the sun tipping toward the horizon, Lila parked an old sedan in front of the garage. No autopilot, just her hands on the wheel. The garage had changed. Fresh paint on the walls. New tools hanging where rusted ones once leaned. A second bay added, where a group of kids now clustered around a stripped-down engine, arguing cheerfully about torque and air-fuel mix. A small sign over the door, Rhea's Auto and Youth Mechanics Workshop, supported by the Little Gear Fund. Mia looked older, somehow, though her ponytail was as wild as ever. Blue paint still smudged her fingers. This time, it was on a whiteboard, where she sketched a more balanced go-kart frame. She spotted Lila and ran over, eyes bright. "You're late," she said, grinning. "We already took the engine apart without you." "Good," Lila replied. "Means I get to ask all the annoying questions." Mia's smile dipped, just for a heartbeat, into something more serious. "Dad's in the back," she said. "He knows you're coming." The last time they'd spoken had been through slammed doors and harsh words. Lila wiped her palms on her jeans, suddenly nervous in a way boardrooms had never managed to make her. She walked around the garage, past the kids, past the go-kart still crooked, but now with a sturdier frame, to the small patch of cracked concrete out back, and the sun painted everything in soft gold. Noah sat on the back step, a bottle of soda beside him, watching the sky shift. He heard her before he saw her, shoulders tensing, then settling. She stood a few feet away. "I didn't want to come if she started." "Sit," he said quietly. She sat. For a while, they didn't speak. The sounds from inside the garage floated out, the clank of metal. Mia's laugh. Someone shouting Lefty Lucy over the whir of a drill. "I read your letter," Noah said finally. Lila stared at her hands, scarred now with tiny nicks from tools, smudged with grease that never quite came off, no matter how hard she scrubbed. "It wasn't meant to be published," she said. "I know." He paused. "But I'm glad it was." The cicadas sang in the weeds. A car drove by, tires hissing on distant asphalt. "I'm not ready to forgive everything," Noah said. Each word felt carefully chosen, as if he had spent hours rehearsing the sentence and it still didn't come easy. "I don't know if I ever will. You were part of something that took everything." "I know," she whispered. But when Mia sent those files, he exhaled, a long, slow breath. "She didn't ask me. She didn't ask you. She just did what she thought was right." And for once, the truth actually did something. Not enough, Evramum. Never enough. But something. He turned his head, looking at her fully for the first time in months. "I believe what you're trying to do now is real," he said. "Broken, late, but real." Her eyes burned. "That doesn't mean we're—" "I know," she said. "It doesn't have to mean anything. I didn't come to ask for us. I came because the kids keep wiring the batteries backward." That made him snort, a tiny surprise sound that was closer to a laugh than anything else. "Yeah," he said, "they do." From inside, Mia yelled, "Dad, it's smoking again," followed by a chorus of "cool" from the other kids. Noah sighed and pushed himself to his feet. "You coming?" he asked. Lila nodded and stood too. They walked back into the garage together. Not touching, not healed, but moving side by side, toward the sound of young voices and small, determined hands, trying to understand how things worked and how to fix them when they didn't. Later, when the sun had sunk and the kids had gone home, when the last tool had been hung back on its hook, Lila climbed into the old sedan. She started the engine. No screens lit up with route suggestions. No gentle voice offered to take over. The wheel was solid under her palms. The road ahead glowed in twin tunnels of headlight. She drove herself out of the neighborhood, toward the city, then past it. The sky above was a dark dome, pricked with stars she hadn't noticed in years. For the first time since she'd left that rusted car with her mother, she didn't feel like she had to outrun the past. She just had to keep moving forward, 1 mile at a time, knowing that behind her, in a small garage with fresh paint and scarred hands, something was being slowly and carefully repaired. Not just engines, not just reputations, something in her, something in them all.